This is John DiBiase. Welcome to Disabilities Journal. The next series of shows are going to gear on disabilities that are not readily recognized. I mean, you can recognize somebody with a crutch. Maybe you can recognize somebody who has a developmental disability because they're in a wheelchair or because of the way they talk. There are other disabilities that aren't like that. Disabilities that people keep inside. And I have with me today as my guest Donna Martini. Donna is a wellness educator. She's an author, and she's a cognitive host. And we share something, Donna. We both have Crohn's disease.
Yes, we do.
And that's what I'd like to talk about today, the challenges that we face with Crohn's and the way we have overcome the Crohn's, because we really have. I know that you have, just because of the achievements that you've had.
I guess we plow through irrespective of the diagnosis, because the Crohn's is not something that just goes away, that's for sure. No. It's constantly challenging, and that people may not be aware what that disease does to the person, but it can really deplete you daily because of dehydration and nutrient deficits. So we're working every day. You and I are getting up in the morning, and we may be, you know, what do they say, behind the 8 ball or below ground zero, and then have to somehow come up to live our day. And doing that day in and day out could really take its toll, especially on the emotions and the mental process. So yeah, if we're still plowing forward, that means we did something good that day to keep ourselves going.
Yeah. You know, I bought donuts this morning, and I looked at them, and I'm going, okay, if I eat these donuts and have 4 cups of coffee, I may not get home. And I say that may sound amusing, but it's the truth. You have a situation where you're not in a good place with your gut.
Right.
Okay, maybe I'll say it that way, as gently as possible.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't even really want to go out to dinner or go out for meals. I get asked out. I won't go. I always cook at home. I invite people to my home for a nice Italian meal, but it's gluten-free, and it's got, you know, it's steamed versus fried and all these other things, because I know I won't react to it. And I've learned how to cook for myself and for my health, but also to make it taste good, because I can't force everybody else to eat like me.
Right,
who don't.
right.
So yeah, to find, my daughter is celiac. Celiac runs in the family. And so we've all learned how to make meals interesting so that we don't feel that we're different. But go to family gatherings and we have to look at all the amazing food we can't eat. That's another thing that works on you, that just plays on you.
It's very frustrating.
Yeah. Listen, there's much worse things in life. Trust me. That was the least of the worries with Crohn's disease. That would be great. But Crohn's disease is not something that really kills you. Crohn's disease is something that sort of tears away at your body, you know, year after year, inflammation, and it just causes harm to the organs. It slows you down. And it works on you mentally, because you know it's something that you're living with forever. There's no cure. The biologics and all the other medications are sometimes worse than the Crohn's. So you have to make that choice, because once you're on them, you may not be able to get off of them. That plays on you too. So surgeries, you know, blockages, I have had 4 of them. So when you eat, you always have that in the back of your mind. Could this be the day that my intestines are going to be twisted and it's not going to go through? And then you remember the pain.
Right.
And of course, you're always remembering how many, you know, you're always trying to find a bathroom or get to the bathroom or worry about having to go to the bathroom. It's just, yeah. If you're, and I'm only talking about this for the purpose of the show. I don't talk about it at all, because I don't want anyone in my life to have to worry about it or think about it.
Yeah, I don't even talk about it to my wife, except some days she'll get up and she'll see me laying in bed, and the dog will come up and lick my face, and she usually chases the dog, but some days she doesn't, and she could see that it's just not a day.
Right. She sees it on your face?
Yeah, she can. She can see that my face is different. At a party, somebody will pass around and say, "Oh, would you like some peanut M&Ms?" And I go, gee, what's today? And I look at I go, oh yeah, well I could use a couple of days off. I'll be in the hospital tomorrow. But you make it, you almost have to make it as a joke.
You do, and it does actually help. It does actually help, and I feel very privileged that, that I'm here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I have a very close relationship with God, and I feel like I'm supposed to be here for a reason and keep on going, and I'm supposed to learn. And as a wellness coach who lived the quintessential life, I'm talking diet, all organic. I knew everything to do, yoga, Pilates, meditation. I taught it, I lived it. I was a walking billboard for well-being, and then I was stricken with this. And I say stricken, but to be honest, I really believe that as much as I was dealing with my physical self, I wasn't addressing some of my emotional issues from my past. Okay. I was allowing things to get to me underneath, and the stress went inward. Now we know there's no real cause. We don't know the cause for autoimmune disease. At least we don't know what physical cause.
Right.
But you and I both know how stress-related it is, and I truly believe there's an emotional cause. And when I wasn't allowing for my feelings and emotions to be heard on the outside of myself, they were only on the inside, I think that's what affected me. I think it has everything to do with our gut biome, mm-hmm. but I see no reason why our bacteria wouldn't respond to anger, resentment, fear, anxiety, or an old negative dialogue that you're constantly trying to talk yourself out of, or abuse, betrayal. All those things, they're major.
Yeah.
And so if we don't somehow get them out, and we don't get out trapped trauma, which I also experienced in my youth, how is our body supposed to, really get through that every day and respond? And of course, once you have the disease, you're diagnosed, now you really have to pay attention because the stress triggers everything.
Right.
Well, so John, what are you supposed to do? Go around and tell everyone, don't stress me out?
Don't stress me out because I have Crohn's.
People are people, our situations. I'm going through it now in my last semester of school. And I have a professor who's horrific. Like, she should not be teaching anymore. And we're all complaining about it, but everybody else is like shrugging it off. And I'm not as able to shrug it off. That's my thing to deal with, but.
And we internalize a lot.
Yes.
And we internalize it not because we want to, but because I'm not even sure why.
I wonder.
Okay, and that was like.
And I wonder how many
TV thing to say.
Yes, and I wonder how many people with Crohn's are like maybe type A or have anxiety issues in addition to, or are perfectionist, or perhaps, have been hard on themselves. You wonder if that's a correlation, and that's one of the reasons why I sought out, my higher degrees in psychology, mm-hmm. because I want to know. I really am putting the two together. I always have, because each system, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, they all relate. And so, of course, you and I, we use the spiritual side to lift us up.
Right.
But, how many times is our spiritual side saying, listen, you got to deal with this? Or the signs are going to come out, the symptoms are going to come out as disease because we're on dis-ease of the body.
Right.
And who's causing that dis-ease of the body?
Let me ask you a question. I was 35. I was just about to get married. I got married. I was an old man. I married a baby, too. She couldn't drink at our wedding. And she'll yell at us if she watches this particular segment. Yeah, she was only 20.
Wow.
And I didn't know that. But that's a whole other story. We'll do that over drinks someday. We were getting married, we were preparing for the wedding, all those things that go mm-hmm. into the preparation. And I just didn't feel good. And I couldn't even describe that I didn't feel good. Yeah. The week before our wedding, we went to Jones Beach, and I came home, and I spiked 103 fever, and I was deathly ill. In fact, on our honeymoon, I was still ill, which was another week ago. I was sick the whole summer. Finally, somebody sent me for a CAT scan. They didn't have MRIs in those days. It was 1986, and MRI was a brand new thing. And the guy said, yeah. He said, you have Crohn's disease. And I said, okay. And he said, we want you to take these pills. And they were sulfur pills. That was the state of the art at the time.
Yeah.
Prednisone was
Right.
the thing that brought you down. And prednisone is a really great drug. You
It
really
is.
feel terrific after you're taking it.
It is.
But
The
stuff that it
detrimental
does
after
to you,
effects.
yeah.
It precludes us from being able to stay on it for any length of time.
Yeah, yeah, and you look and you say, okay, well, so like, how long do I take this for? Like it's
Right.
the flu, like the rest of your life.
No,
And
yeah.
when somebody says the rest of your life,
Forever.
it's scary. You know.
You can't think that far ahead. You
Right.
really can. And I think about that all the time, John, because there are young people who get diagnosed at 16, 17 years old. I was 49.
Okay.
I can't even tell you how I cry for these children, because how do you date? How do you live your life? I was at least older. I lived, partially,
Mm-hmm.
had the children, did that whole thing. I found out that I actually didn't find out I had Crohn's, but I was sick when I found out that I wasn't feeling well. I had a low-grade fever. I was on a date in Manhattan, and I begged the guy, let's take a taxi because I don't feel well, I just don't want to walk, and he wouldn't do it. And I had a fever. It was horrible.
Because
And
people don't understand.
but I didn't even know. I didn't even know enough to say it because I didn't know I had Crohn's. I got misdiagnosed for an entire year. In fact, I had what was the doctor said mild proctitis. He says that is really unusual. That we only see that in usually gay men. We don't see it.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking, oh, this must be something serious, he let it go. And no matter how many times I went to see him in a year, he actually claimed that I was, that I was faking it. I was, overemphasizing. Well, finally, when I got the tests, and he was able to do a colonoscopy, he was white as a ghost when he told me. He says, you have Crohn's disease. I'm really sorry you have Crohn's disease. So even he didn't believe me.
Right.
My own doctor. Of course, I left him, fired him on the spot. But, how if we can't even get a practitioner to understand our symptoms and how we feel, how are we going to get lay people?
I finally found a GI about 20 years ago as a result of being downtown for the World Trade Center, and the doc that I picked is a pulmonologist as well, and he recommended this GI, who I really like, Dr. Goldenberg. That's a shout out. And he said to me in our first meeting, you know more about Crohn's disease than I ever will, because you live it every day.
You live it every day.
And young people who have it, I feel terrible about young people because they've got a whole life to live, and they've got to figure out how to live it as best they can.
And the embarrassment.
And thrive.
Right, and in that age, you can't handle the embarrassment.
Gosh, yeah.
Like at our age, okay, we're going to take it. We have an accident. Well, we're at a business meeting. That's happened to me. You just politely say whatever and you leave. But I can't imagine children even wanting to engage in activities
17-year-old,
because of fear of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing.
When I was diagnosed, I read everything I possibly could about the disease. And I found out that 2 presidents had something like it. They're not really sure.
Sure.
But Eisenhower and Kennedy both had Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or whatever they had. But actually, Eisenhower had a massive resection while he was in the White House because he had a blowout, as we would call it. His intestines exploded.
Wow.
And it was an emergency surgery. And in 1960, people were dying of stuff that we live with.
Right.
I also, when I went to grad school, I published a thesis on Crohn's disease. That was my thesis. And Remicade was the...
It was back then? I didn't know it was around.
Yeah, it was. Well, it wasn't back that far. It was 2002.
There you go. Yes. Okay.
2002.
I forgot.
I did things late.
Sorry.
Okay.
That was terrible of me to say that.
No, it's
especially
all right.
since I'm graduating from
No, I did things
grad school now.
at my pace.
I get it.
And so that's one of the things that I think we learn is that we do things at our pace. And as much as we can control our pace, we're successful.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk on this show. Because normally I'm talking about wellness to the general public. I'm not talking about Crohn's. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about principles that I've learned. And but maybe we should speak to that, seeing how people with a condition like this maybe don't want to go out or do things, and maybe they'll to not harp on it. Like I have people saying, come on, let's go out, let's go out, let's go out. And I'm like, can't we just like stay at home? I'm going to make you a nice meal, blah, blah, blah. They won't just stop with that. And then it makes you feel bad, like you're some kind of party poop, pun intended. And how much more self-esteem hits can I take?
Yeah.
So to understand the person, like I'm not saying I'm staying home and laying in bed. I'm welcoming you into my home and actually cooking for you. Isn't that enough?
Yeah,
to stress myself out to that point sometimes. And I adore being with people, and I adore, educating and helping. And so if I'm pushing myself every day through a disease, then I need that benefit of the doubt from others, especially my family, and from friends. And I don't want anyone coddling me, and I don't want businesses to know or clients to, I really don't.
Right.
I really don't. But if you have the support from your family and friends and that tight-knit, I think you could deal with the rest because they don't know the situation.
Yeah.
When your family knows the situation and they're still not understanding.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. And then what about this, John? I don't know about you, but I don't want to tell anyone because I don't want them worrying about me. I can't handle the stress on my mother's face. She's 83 years old. Yeah. And if I tell her anything just in jest, she'll crinkle her forehead. She's like this, and she goes through anxiety, and she goes through worry. She lives with me. So I don't want that either. Right. So I can't tell you everything. Just accept that I say no to this today.
Right.
Or accept that I'll do it tomorrow, or when, So I think that's the biggest issue for me, and what I really want to get out there is the idea of helping the person means that you're actually accepting what they're saying.
That's the support.
Right.
Accepting is the support.
Yes, and also not feeling sorry, because I don't like anyone feeling sorry for me, but instead just, if I ask for something, that's an acknowledgement that I need help at that moment, and I will speak out. And I've always said this to my mother: when I need your help, I'll ask you. You don't have to keep asking me every minute of the day, because then she makes me feel like an invalid. So, and it is hard on the family to know how to act. That's another thing. They don't know what to say. People don't know what to say to you. Have you found, I was going to ask you the question because I had a friend with Crohn's, and I would ask him, how do you feel? He didn't like it. He didn't want to be asked. I don't either. I realized I don't like to be asked either.
I found out that you had Crohn's quite by accident because I talked about mine.
Right.
And I think that because I've taught on the graduate level, that I'm more comfortable talking about it as
a condition,
as part of it's a condition,
it's exactly.
as part of the learning experience.
Right, it's not personal at that point.
Right, because my degree is in healthcare administration, and that's what I taught. So maybe, and I published this. I mean, it's like I submitted the abstract, and a couple of weeks later, Sheila said, "How was your day?" And I said, "It was okay." She said, "I just made it better," and it was accepted for this presentation.
Oh, awesome.
The abstract was accepted, right? And I said, "Oh my God!" She said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I got to write a paper now because the abstract was accepted." But I think that maybe educating folks or helping folks who have Crohn's, and I've had people open up to me and come to me and say, "I've got it. What do you do?"
Right.
Well, first of all, I don't fry my meatballs. I bake my meatballs.
Right.
If you go to Rome and order spaghetti and meatballs, they'll look at you like you have 3 heads.
Yes, I've been to Italy several times, so.
I use panko.
And we are Sicilian. We are from Naples. We're from all parts of my family.
Oh, so you're like...
And everyone cooks differently and serves differently. Mm-hmm. I'm eating traditional Sicilian food all the time, which is very healthy, by the way.
Is it really?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm sort of a mix of German, Irish, English, which we don't talk about around St. Patrick's Day, and Irish and Italian, and I have like a whole bunch of stuff. But the meatballs and spaghetti, and I make this for my Irish in-laws. I use panko.
I can't even have tomato sauce, John.
Really?
No way.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so everyone has their degree and level, but back to the discussion about family and about having to sit around the table and then having people look at you not eat, and then, there are people who are handling their Crohn's well, and there are people who haven't adjusted yet, and it's harder for them. So what would we want to do and say to them? Food is not the worst thing. To not be able to eat something is not the worst thing that can happen to us. That's for sure.
Right.
It could be much worse. And I did live with an ileostomy bag for 4 months, so I know what it's like to do that. If I have to go back to that again, I know what to expect. It's not something we want to do, but I get it. A lot of people worry about that, though, when they have Crohn's disease. That's a constant thought on your mind of what's the next thing that's going to happen to me. And I think that's something that people take for granted. Because of Crohn's disease, you're looking at me at a certain state and certain level that I'm trying to achieve every day. But it's a progressive disease. So every year we get older, every year I see something different changing in my face and my body. I now have, more autoimmune issues to deal with in my eyes. For instance, I'm going for laser surgery because my retina is webbing, which means that the attachment there, it's tearing, but that's all part of inflammation. So, our minds, we're juggling a lot, even though we look pretty good to you. It took a lot to get to that point that day, probably. And it takes a lot for us to get up in the morning and still be happy about life because we don't know what life's going to bring from day to day, literally. So what do you do for someone like that? What do you say to someone like that? If you ask them how they feel, it reminds them that they're maybe not feeling well. And so instead, you just say, you look great. And don't say, oh, you look heavier, you look light. Sometimes I'm bloated from inflammation. And then they say, oh, you lost weight. No, I didn't lose weight. I just lost fluid and inflammation. I don't want to have to go through that discussion. Just say, oh, you look great.
Yep.
You're doing awesome.
I got to be deadly honest with you because I know that this happens. I'm going like, is Donna going to be able to show up? Am I going to be able to show up? Is this show actually going to happen today? Well, we're here, folks. We've only got a few minutes left, but we're here.
But we prepared. I would not eat the wrong things. I would almost always know ahead of time how much time I need to be ready, drinking my fluids. Yeah, so, and life could be really bad if we're going through a flare. It could be really hectic. But if we can stay stable, eat the right foods, take care of ourselves, stay in prayer, meditation, and constantly think of the positive. Like, this discussion today is going to end. I'm not going to be talking about Crohn's again. Like, I'm not going into the world and repeating the story. This is for the purpose.
I don't have tattooed on my head. I have Crohn's disease.
I'm not a cronies, okay? A crony. It's not something that I identify with. But for the purpose of today, I really wanted to just put it out on the table and let people know, this is, and you said you started the show with we're talking about hidden conditions. So when I'm walking down the street, if I'm going into the ladies' room and I have an urgency, I have a Crohn's card, and I've been denied. People, it's like, is it okay if I go ahead of you? Yeah, try to ask that during a concert or something.
A football game,
So I asked once, and after that, I said I'd rather not go than to be put in that position where people are so negative. So yeah, because I looked fine, so they can't see what's going on the inside. To have an escape route all the time is important. But to understand that the people who are asking you, for a favor, and if you don't know anything about what Crohn's is like or other diseases are like, give them the benefit of the doubt. What would it hurt? What would it hurt to give people the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah. Yeah, and I generally do. I don't go up to everybody and say, hi, I'm John DiBiase. I have Crohn's disease. I don't do that.
No.
And we don't do that.
No.
And I don't know anybody who has it that does do that.
And maybe that's an advantage, too. Someone who is in a wheelchair, people are going to look at them and automatically discount them. There's a potential for that. I know what that feels like being a woman in construction, because I was in the construction industry.
Oh, you really?
Oh, yeah. And they judge you by this. They judge you by the size of your chest, even more so. You see some that as, the more attractive you are, the less IQ you have, kind of thing. So I know what it's like to be prejudged, and I wouldn't want that at all. So we have an advantage, if we can go forth as our best self. And maybe we can't expect the general public to be able to acknowledge us at all, but family and friends, they can actually help by fortifying what we want. And each person is different, I'm sure. Fortifying what we would, the best way to handle us. It's a short conversation, and then just adhere to it, right?
Yeah. My sister is very cognizant of what she cooks and what she makes. When I show up, she's got stuff that she knows that I can tolerate.
Right.
Okay. This morning, as I was getting ready to come to the station, Sheila said, how would you like some Eggs Benedict? And I just looked at her and I said, do you know where I'm going? You know where I'm going to be all day? I said, give me a cup of coffee and a piece of toast.
Right.
And I'll
I
be
can't
fine.
even do the coffee, and I can't do the toast unless it's gluten-free. Yeah,
Yep,
so,
okay.
but you know what? And in a way, too, though, John, it makes me feel bad that when people have to go through any trouble for me, because that's another, I feel terrible. So I'll usually bring my own food. Don't worry about me. I'm going to bring stuff to eat. Don't even think about it. It'll be fine. You know, I'm trying constantly to offset that. It's not an easy thing. There's no rights or wrongs, really. It's just about circumstances and trying your best to fit the circumstances. I've learned now, after being diagnosed for 13 years, that I'm going to look at the food and I'm going to feel bad that I can't eat that lasagna or whatever it is that's in front of me. But it's okay, because if I could eat it, I just don't really want to deal with the repercussions. So that made me feel, okay, I'm making a decision not to eat this. So I kind of now feel better about what I don't eat, because I know health speaking, wellness speaking, I'm going to feel better. I'm not going to trigger anything. I'm not going to have accidents, right? Mm-hmm. So I actually feel stronger for saying no. So it's okay. So when people don't have choices for me, I bring my own. It makes me feel okay.
We're about to wind up. This really quick. I really enjoyed talking with you. And yeah, you do maybe luck out with some folks who are very in tune with you, more than placating, more than trying to take care of you. We're just in tune. I'm very...
Or just following your lead.
Yeah.
Just following your lead. You don't have to be super smart. Just follow that person's wishes. That's all.
You know, I'll go, well, not today. Or I'll wake up sometime. We're planning on going on a picnic.
Right.
I can't go, Shields.
Right. That's why I'm not married, John, because I don't want to do that to someone. I mean, you're married and she loves you and you have a great relationship, but to seek that out now, wouldn't it be hard?
Oh, gosh.
Right?
Oh, gosh.
You can't even imagine doing that to someone, or
it would almost
sabotaging
I'd have to be in a Crohn's situation.
Right. You know, you're right. All right, so just in case, someday maybe, John.
Okay. Anyway, we're winding up now. We're down to a minute or so that we have left. And I want to thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We actually met on Facebook, and you came to visit my office.
Oh, I helped your office. Remember, I coached. With the wellness coaching.
We did some real good stuff.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not a cognitive host. You're dyslexic. We're both dyslexic too. It was cognitive coach.
Coach.
Yes.
And I wrote show, and I said host. Folks, thanks so much for visiting us today, and I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you got something out of it, and keep on trucking.